Senator Cory Booker and Senator Elizabeth Warren. One senator said he couldn't do a video, so he'll be here in person on Friday. Senator Bernie Sanders will be speaking at 10 o'clock. Now let us hear from the former head of the Justice Department Civil Rights Division under Eric Holder, the Secretary of Labor under President Barack Obama, and now the Chairman of the Democratic National Committee, the Honorable Tom Perez.
Thank you, Reverend Sharpton. Good morning, everyone. It's an honor to be here. You know, this is a gathering of serial activists, and I always love to be around serial activists. And this is, I think, the third or fourth time I've had the privilege of coming. I was here a year ago, and I don't know about you, but I miss Barack Obama, you know. And it's not just what he did, but it was how he did it. And my late mother's name was Grace. She grew up 152nd Riverside Drive, Washington Heights, which was Mecca for Dominicans coming to the U.S. And, you know, I think of her because he carried himself with such grace. And that's why I think he will go down as one of the most impactful presidents in American history. And along with that, I firmly believe that history will treat Eric Holder in the identical way as one of the most impactful attorneys general, because I had a front row seat, folks. I could tell you stories about Eric Holder. Leadership in action. Leadership matters, my friends. I remember vividly the conversations we had about voting issues. We could never have done what we did in voting without Eric Holder having my back every single day. And as Reverend Sharpton correctly pointed out, it wasn't simply about issues confronting the African American community. I'll never forget a conversation, a meeting we had one Friday afternoon. There had been a lawsuit filed in the state of Arizona regarding a bill called SB 1070. SB 1070 was another reflection of the far right's ill-advised efforts to demonize immigrants and to do it in very, very hurtful ways. And the question presented was, should the federal government intervene? It was a hard case. And there was a meeting around that table. And there were a lot of people who were expressing reservations about whether we could win that case. And you know what? I walked out of that meeting and I wasn't so sure what was going to happen, because the boss was hearing viewpoint diversity, I guess I would call it. I know where I stood, and you know what? The most important vote in the room knew where he stood. He knew where he stood because he understood that it was always the right time to do the right thing. And we took SB 1070 all the way up to the Supreme Court, and we won because of people like Eric Holder and the courage that he had. And he took some grief, and y'all had his back day in and day out. And I appreciate that, because by extension, you had my back, because civil rights is indeed the unfinished business of America. And we'll never be America until truly, bless you over there who just sneezed. Bless all of you on behalf of all the ministers here. But I firmly believe that, and I've had the privilege of a lifetime. And people ask me, what do you miss most about working for the likes of Barack Obama and Eric Holder, who I sat next to in cabinet meetings? We both wondered, man, they let the wrong people in the room, you know. I remember it well. What do I do now? I asked him the first time I came in. He said, don't shoot spitballs. That would be uncouth, okay? And so I want to appreciate your training on that, because I complied with that. But I'll tell you, every single day, Eric Holder was a moral compass of this administration. And that is why it was such a joy to work with him. And as I reflect, this coming Saturday is 100 days of Donald Trump. And I can only reflect on two words: chaos and carnage. Moral compass is not a word I would use to describe what's going on. And we need people like you causing good trouble in John Lewis's words, or Baird Rustin, who said, angelic troublemakers. I feel like I'm at a gathering of angelic troublemakers here today, because that's what we need to do. That's what's made America, America, was we've always had angelic troublemakers. And we need them more than ever now. I would respectfully observe, Reverend Sharpton, and I never would have thought about this until now. I believe our presence here today is more important than our presence a year ago, because we have existential threats to our democracy as we know it. And that is why I was so honored to be invited to be here with you. You look at the first 100 days. You look at the first 2 hours of this administration. Okay? Let's just start out with that. Let's just, hour 2. He issued executive action to make it harder for first-time home buyers to purchase a home. Now, under Eric Holder's leadership, we settled the 2 largest residential fair lending discrimination cases in the history of the Fair Housing Act. We know that African Americans and Latinos have been disproportionately targeted in scams, the corrosive power of fine print, transforming the American dream into the American nightmare. And Barack Obama made it easier for first-time home buyers to buy a home. What did Donald Trump do? Literally 2 hours into his administration, he made it harder by rescinding the Obama-era rules that would have helped and were in fact helping first-time home buyers to buy a home. Let's go to hour 4. And if I weren't making this up, it would be funny, but you gotta laugh so you don't cry. That was day 1. We worked on a case involving Texas voter ID. And by the way, the Attorney General outlined the facts, which is that these claims of voter fraud are a fraud in themselves. But let me just give you one data point. Over a 10-year period, these are not Tom Perez or Eric Holder's facts. These were the facts elicited in the trial. Over a 10-year period, roughly 46 million votes were cast in Texas. Over a 10-year period, there were 0, count them, 0 reported incidents of non-citizen voting, and 2, count them, 2, 1 for each thumb, reported incidents of in-person voter fraud out of 46 million votes cast. Those are the facts. Those are not the alternative facts. Those were the facts submitted by the state of Texas. And that was the function of a voter fraud unit that Mr. Abbott, then the Attorney General, now regrettably the governor, put in place. So those are the facts, my friends. And so hour 4 of the administration, there is now a hearing in Texas on whether this was intentionally discriminatory, and the Department of Justice backed out. Never would have happened under this guy. Never would have happened under that president. Certainly wouldn't have happened under my watch. But we see the chaos and carnage literally hours into the administration, days later, making it harder for people saving for retirement to save for retirement. We see this executive order talking about making it in America, buying it in America. Well, you know what? I turned over the page, and I think, I think the paper on the executive action said made in China, because, there's been 50 or some odd pallets of Ivanka merchandise since roughly the first of the year that have come in from China. And by the way, the wall he wants to build? The fine print, if you read the fine print, he needs a garage door, because they need to drive all the products that they make in Mexico through to the United States. If he could start the Make It in America program with his own businesses, we could create thousands of jobs. But I think the biggest challenge and the chaos and the carnage were the efforts to repeal the Affordable Care Act. And the Affordable Care Act has been a lifesaver for African Americans, for Latinos, for people of all races and all zip codes. The opioid epidemic does not discriminate. It touches everywhere. And when you propose to repeal the Affordable Care Act, you are tearing out that lifeline for people in rural Kentucky, for people here in New York City, for people in Cleveland, for people in rural America, urban America, white America, black America, Latino America, Asian America. And you're ripping that out. That is wrong. And then you propose budgets. They call it a skinny budget. I think of another word that begins with S that I won't use. It's a shoddy budget. It's a shoddy budget. It's a budget that is morally bankrupt. And I learned from Reverend Barber and Reverend Sharpton and others that budgets are moral documents. They reflect the values of a community. And you propose to eliminate funding for Meals on Wheels, and then today you announce a tax cut that will benefit the wealthiest of the wealthy. Budgets are moral documents, my friend, and that budget is morally bankrupt. This tax cut is morally bankrupt because you know what it's about, folks? It's about the starve the beast philosophy of government. When you don't believe in government, you give tax cuts to the wealthiest, you throw your hands up, you say we can't fund government services, and then you cut the most important services. This budget proposes to cut community development block grants, which have been a lifeline for cities across this country. Cut funding for education. Cut funding for job training. He talks about wanting to make sure that workers have a pipeline to the middle class. We need to make sure that we continue to invest in our human capital. And so we've seen this chaos and carnage. But I'll tell you the most remarkable thing, Reverend Sharpton, about the first 100 days, in my mind, is not what I've observed Donald Trump do and Paul Ryan do. And by the way, I don't know what they call it, the repeal, because some people, he wants to brand everything. It's the Trump Hotel, it's the Trump steaks, it's Trump ties. And, when you say Trump care, he said, no, it's Ryan care. Well, actually, I think what they ought to call it is I don't care, because I'm not sure they care about anyone when they're trying to do this. But I'll tell you, the most amazing thing about the first 100 days, my friends, is not what Donald Trump has done. It's what you all have done, marshaling the collective power of we. January 20th was an important day, but January 21st was so much more important. Thank you to the women in this room and around America who led those marches. When women succeed, America indeed succeeds, and you stood tall and continue to stand tall. They were writing the obituary on the Affordable Care Act, and the reason why it failed is because the facts got in the way. The facts on the ground are that the Affordable Care Act is a lifesaver. But the other reason it failed is because you all mobilized in red states, in blue states, in every zip code to tell the truth through the eyes of real people who have benefited from the Affordable Care Act. And that's what we need to continue to do. And that's what we will do as a party. And what we need to do as a party is more. We need to continue to help to lead the resistance together with all of you. We all succeed when we all succeed. But we need to do more than that, my friends. We need not only to oppose Donald Trump, but we need to articulate clearly what we stand for. And that's exactly what we're doing at the Democratic Party. Because I have to be honest, I've been making a lot of house calls. And you know what? We've been taking all too many people for granted. I've been in Detroit. I've been in Milwaukee. I was up in Flint. I've been elsewhere. I've been in rural America, urban America. I hear from folks in Detroit, Milwaukee, and elsewhere, Tom, you can't show up every 4th October to my church and say you care and call that an organizing strategy. I'm here to tell you that I hear that. We have to be in communities 12 months a year, working together with you, organizing with you, telling our vision with you, making sure that we're listening, we're learning, and most importantly, we are acting. We're acting to improve your life. We're acting to earn your vote, because I have learned that trust isn't something you're given the day you win an election. Trust is something you must earn. And you earn it by articulating what you stand for. And I am a proud Democrat. My father, in his broken Ricky Ricardo English, used to say to me in my youth in Buffalo, New York, where we grew up, Tom, a Rockefeller Republican is still a Republican. That's what he used to say to me. And you know what? I am a proud Democrat because you know what? The Democratic Party believes that we all succeed only when we all succeed. The Democratic Party believes that our diversity is our greatest source of strength. The Democratic Party believes that nobody who works a full-time job should have to live in poverty. When you work a full-time job, you should earn a middle-class wage. The Democratic Party believes that voting is a sacred right, and we should be fighting to make it easier to vote, not harder to vote. The Democratic Party believes that we need to make sure we're working together with police departments and communities to hold police departments accountable and to build relationships of trust. I look at what Jeff Sessions, the Attorney General, is saying and doing. And you know what? I had the privilege, because he had my back, of working on more police misconduct cases than had ever been done in the history of the Department of Justice's Civil Rights Division. And what we learned is when you do that, and when you bring communities together, when you reject these false choices that say, whose side are you on? That's what I kept hearing Donald Trump ask. Whose side are you on? The police or the community? You talk to any police officer, they'll tell you that's the wrong question. My most important currency as a police officer is the trust of the community, which I must earn. And you look at what we have done, the work that we have done. We have helped make communities safer. We've helped make the jobs of police officers easier, and we have helped ensure that we can save lives by putting in place policies and practices that ensure respect for the community. That's what we have to do. That's what we did under Eric Holder, and they are doing it so differently now. And that's why we have to continue to stand up for what we believe in as a Democratic Party. We believe that we must continue to acknowledge that voting and civil rights are the unfinished business of America, and America will never truly be America until every person in every zip code has equal access to opportunity. We believe as Democrats in second chances for everyone. And you know what? I have an ambivalent relationship with that word, because in my work, I have discovered that there are so many people who frankly didn't have a fair first chance. And we need to make sure everyone has a fair first chance by investing in education, by ensuring that everybody has access to educational opportunity that my parents taught me was the great equalizer. And all too many communities are underfunded. All too many communities are still de facto separate and unequal in the school system. And we need to acknowledge that reality and fight for equal opportunity in every school district for every child. We believe we should be building more schools and not more prisons. We believe that we ought to have a Secretary of Education that actually believes in public education, and an EPA administrator that actually understands that climate change is real. It is not fictitious. We need to understand that clean drinking water is a basic human right in America, in every zip code. These are the values, my friends, that we stand for, and these are the values that we will fight for. When we see these tax cuts that are brought to the extreme wealthy at the expense of everybody else, we will fight that as well. And you know what? I leave you with this, because I had the privilege, in addition to working for Eric Holder and Barack Obama, I had the privilege of working for Ted Kennedy, who was the liberal lion of the Senate, a person of accomplishment. He was the chair of the accomplishments wing of the Democratic Party. He got stuff done, and he got a lot of it done on behalf of people. And his brother Bobby, back in the 1960s, during a period of time that has remarkable parallels to where we're at now, he stood alongside Cesar Chavez and he said the following: "We stand at a defining moment in history, a point of difficulty and danger that would determine our country's future." And he went on to say, "When your children and grandchildren take their place in America, taking good jobs at good pay, when you look at them, you will tell them, I was there. I stood up. I marched. I did this. My friends, you are the power of we that has always brought us a better America. The arc of the moral universe is indeed long, and it indeed bends toward justice, but as Eric Holder said before, it never bends on its own. We must bend it together. And when we bend it together, when we organize, when you run for offices, when we have moral Mondays and moral Tuesdays and moral every day of the week, when we hold people accountable, when we articulate our values clearly, and when we work in partnership, that's how we succeed. And we've had these moments in American history before. We've had these moments. And there's an author named Walter Isaacson who wrote a biography of a guy named Albert Einstein. And he tells of one of these moments. He tells of Albert Einstein's letters to his son that he wrote in the height of the McCarthy era. In one of those letters, he said to his son, "What's going on with this country? You know, what is McCarthy? McCarthy has so many of the pathologies that forced me to flee Germany. What is going on?" And then you fast forward a year later or so, when McCarthy has been censured and relegated to the dustbin of history where he belonged. And he writes another letter to his son in which he says, "What a country! I love this country. It has," and this is his word he uses, "it has this gyroscope. And just when you think the gyroscope is spinning out of control, it rights itself." Well, folks, the gyroscope is not a piece of technology. The gyroscope is everybody in this room and everyone across this country who put their values into action every day, who organize, who run for office, who are out there talking and acting. And that's what we will do. That's what we are doing. I have unlimited optimism that we will take America back, because our diversity, our inclusion, our commitment to opportunity has always been what's made America great, and it always will be. So let's bend it together, my friends. Let's be the gyroscope together, my friends. Thank you very much, Reverend Sharpton, for the honor of being here.
Before the Attorney General and Chair leave the stage, I'm going to bring on our panel, because as I said, this is National Action Network. What are we going to do about all of we heard? They've made suggestions. How do we organize in this time? But let me also acknowledge why we organize. We have in the audience the living examples of why we fight. And this organization doesn't get in a fight and leave. We stay in the fight. And we've been with those that others have rallied for a minute and left them. We never leave them, and they never leave us. Since 1999, she's been with us. We're going to be with her all the way. Her son was shot by New York City police, 41 bullets hit